In Total Retail's recent ranking of the top 100 fastest growing retailers, Chewy.com tops the list. How did the online pet food and supplies retailer post an impressive 37% sales increase for its 2019 fiscal year? And what other companies made the list? Find out in the Top 100 Fastest Growing Retailers report, a ranking of publicly traded companies based on year-over-year net sales growth. Download the Top 100 Fastest Growing Retailers report today by going to mytotalretail.com/resources.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan of Total Retail, and today I am joined by Jeanne Anderson, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Saatchi Art Group. I'm going to be talking to Jeanne today a little bit about Saatchi Art, and particularly how it's kind of engaged its customers during the pandemic and any shifts it's seen in its business during this time. So thanks for joining me today, Jeanne.
Thank you for having me.
So a good place to start, I think, would be for you to briefly tell our audience a little bit about Saatchi Art for those that might not be familiar with the company.
Absolutely. Saatchi Art is the world's leading online art gallery. We're a marketplace site. Our goal is to help buyers discover artwork that they love from a remarkable, talented group of emerging artists all over the world. We have really an unparalleled collection of paintings, drawing, sculpture, photography, prints, you name it. And on the site, actually, we have over 1 million pieces of art by over 100,000 artists from 80 countries all over the world. We have all kinds of buyers as well. Some are, as you would imagine, very devoted art collectors or designers, and others are just people who want to buy that perfect piece for their living room. Everyone can browse and buy themselves online in that classic e-commerce experience, but we also offer complimentary assisted shopping. So a curator can join you and help work with you personally to pick out the perfect piece for your home or for your budget, really. Really, at Saatchi, like I said, what we're trying to do every day is we shine a light on these really talented artists, and we give consumers an easy, open way to discover original artwork or an artist that they'll just love. And that's what makes us happy to do our jobs, just bringing artists and buyers together.
So as you mentioned, a lot of your customers are just kind of looking for that right piece of art for their home. And, as we've all experienced in this country in the last, 5-6 months, everyone's been spending more time at home, given the COVID pandemic. How have you seen the pandemic impact your business at Saatchi Art? What are the different ways that you might have had to evolve?
Well, you're right. Being at home has been a big factor for us. For our e-commerce business, I think we've been one of those lucky online retailers that has seen a huge lift in traffic and a great amount of interest from buyers. I mean, I should clarify, when the initial shockwave hit of COVID, we, like everybody, we worried. I was primarily focused on the health and safety of our employees and how our artists were doing, and we were moving everybody remote and making sure that the business would just, survive the storm. But, in mid-April, I would say, we started really seeing this remarkable increase in traffic. And it seems for many people, particularly high household income customers, they found themselves, like you said, sheltering in at home. They were looking up at their blank walls and they thought, I've always wanted to buy art and I'm home. Let's see if I can do this online. And as the biggest site in the industry, they found us, which is terrific and wonderful. We've seen incredible growth. It's been really a roller coaster, but I'm so proud of the team because they've risen to that moment and we're on track for a record year in sales, all because, like you said, people are at home and we are there to help.
So customers, and particularly luxury buyers, have traditionally, for higher ticket items, they want to be in store, they want to see, they want to touch something. I guess, and I would imagine that extends to the art community as well, and these art pieces that people are buying. Obviously, that's not the case for Saatchi Art. This is an online marketplace. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about your kind of business model and then it's kind of a second part to that, how you may have seen consumer behavior shift during the pandemic, especially for that luxury customer that's looking to buy kind of a higher priced item.
Yeah. It's funny, for luxury, I think even before the pandemic, the concept of luxury buying has really changed quite a bit in the last 10 years. It used to be that luxury was really, dominated by these big houses, the Chanels and the Diors and those big name brands and that incredible heritage. It did sort of resonate as this exclusive, incredibly elevated shopping experience in store. But that's changed. I mean, I think in modern luxury now, you have so many more brands and you have all these young, innovative designers collaborating with the big fashion houses. And that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago. Today, if you really think about it, Joe, like a rare Air Jordan is just as luxury as a classic Hermes scarf. And that luxury market has expanded to younger buyers who are more accustomed to on-demand shopping. And that in and of itself sort of changes the way we have to think about luxury. Going back to what you asked about the in-store experience, I think retailers have sort of been over-indexing on the idea that the physical experience is what people really treasure in buying luxury. What's proven that to me, beyond obviously the data that we're seeing about, online luxury sales going up. What's proven that to me is the concept of drops. Waiting in line or stressing to make sure your private sales rep has you on a list for a particular item that's dropping, that doesn't align with the traditional concept of an elevated in-store experience at all. And yet it's happening successfully, particularly with younger customers. And now it's considered a legitimate part of the luxury brand shopping experience. Extending that to the art world, at a traditional brick and mortar high-end gallery, certainly you could not say that the in-store experience was lovely or elevated at all. In many cases, it's very exclusionary. When you go into a high-end brick and mortar art gallery, the gallery assistant won't even speak to you when you walk in a lot of cases. The prices aren't visible. There's a very limited inventory because there's only so much wall space. It's generally very intimidating. It's a cold experience. So Saatchi Art was founded on the principle that old in-gallery experience was fundamentally flawed and that the art world needed to be transformed. And we've done that. The process of shopping for art online with us feels welcoming and it feels easy. If you want to see highly curated collections, you totally can. Or if you'd prefer to dive deep into our inventory all by yourself, certainly we've got hundreds of thousands of pieces to look at. We don't limit what a customer can see or buy, and we welcome buyers from all backgrounds. We welcome artists from all backgrounds. Our prices are transparent and our customer service still is exceptional. So, we present all of that in a way that builds consumer confidence, and our buyers, they come out of a transaction on Saatchi Art and they think, why would I ever go back to a traditional gallery? This is better. I can do this. I can collect art. And that's sort of where I square myself on this notion of luxury. It's true. I think rather than thinking about the luxury experience being an in-store experience, I think that the true consumer insight for luxury is not that at all. It's about the psychological purchase. And in the old luxury world, in the pre-COVID world, I think you could look at buying luxury in store as the art of providing buyers with that sense of belonging to an elite group that can get access to this scarce purchase. But in this new world, I think the psychology of luxury is going to be very different. I think the COVID crisis has meant that income and job loss and mortality even are very much top of mind in the world that we're living in today. And I think it's pushing customers to think about, what's truly important to them and what really matters, and how they want to genuinely live fuller, better lives. And that's where I think that this has been great for Saatchi. Art is a different kind of luxury purchase. It serves a very different emotional need. Of course, it's a special, expensive object, but artwork hangs in your home. It's intimate, it's lasting. And, it's something you could even possibly see handing down to your kids or grandkids. And for many buyers today, it's also a values-based purchase. You're supporting an artist, which is wonderful, especially right now when artists all over the world need that support. And even at the most basic level, I'm sort of smiling thinking of this, but looking for a beautiful piece of art and putting it up on the wall is something that just can lift you up and inspire you. And I think in the post-COVID world, I think that that's going to be more meaningful than ever, even for that high-end luxury experience.
Yeah, to your point, you're really making it a rewarding experience online, and the customer's getting a satisfaction of the product, once they get it into their home. So it makes a lot of sense. And to your point earlier, Jeannie, in terms of you've been one of the fortunate brands that have seen an uptick in demand during the pandemic. So let's talk a little bit about what you've done to, I hate to use the word capitalize on what is a,
Sure.
a horrific situation for our country, but, to meet that increased demand for your product at this time, what are some of the things have you done? Have you kind of leaned into maybe some additional marketing spend, or, just some other tactics that you might have said, okay, here's an opportunity for us. Let's take advantage of this.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I do think that we've been lucky. We were already really well positioned to meet this increased demand. First and foremost, we're a marketplace model, but we're a marketplace model that doesn't have to worry about supply chain or inventory when it came to the increased demand. We have hundreds of thousands of artists that have, been ready to sell their artwork on any given day for a long time. But more immediately, I think in terms of what you asked, I feel grateful because from a merchandising and marketing standpoint and from like a technical readiness standpoint, we were very ready for the moment. We have leaned into marketing. We've increased spend, but as customers arrive on site, I think what's more important is, we've always told really rich and engaging stories about artists and their work. And we have an in-house team of really impressive art advisors who have backgrounds in art and design, and they help curate and merchandise the site. And really what we all love most about our jobs is that we get to shine that light on these worthwhile artists all over the world who a buyer wouldn't ordinarily get to discover. And when you captivate people by sharing the story of an artist and you tell the buyers about that artist's process and the meaning of a painting or a drawing, you convey the uniqueness and the luxury, and you close sales. And we're very, very good at that. So when the traffic came, we had plenty of content to help sort of enchant and persuade and convert. So I felt great about that. On the technical side, though, because we have startup roots and we've always been an innovative e-commerce company, we were always digital first. We also had an advantage, honestly. We already had spent for the last 2 years a lot of time focusing on tools and features that help customers not only discover the art, but also feel confident about that process of purchasing a high value item online, a luxury item online. That's not to say everything was perfect. I mean, there was one thing that we had to sort of be agile about. In the beginning of 2020, we had already scheduled a project in the pipeline to allow our visitors to view the art that they were considering in their room using a VR experience on their phone. And when COVID hit, we knew that tool was going to be more useful than ever. So we really had to rejuggle the roadmap, and we accelerated the release of that feature to get it out there for customers who were stuck at home. And it's been quite powerful for us. It's helped with conversion tremendously.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you, Jeannie, about was your other art fair, the Other Art Fair. Tell us a little bit about that platform, kind of the inspiration for launching it, and kind of the response that you've seen from consumers to the effort.
Sure. In addition to our e-commerce site, we have this wonderful, as you mentioned, we have what we call the Other Art Fair. It's an in real life art event business that we sort of think about strategically as the equivalent of our in-store channel. And in normal times, we host art fairs all around the world under the brand The Other Art Fair. We would set up it for a weekend in London or LA or New York or Sydney. And at that event, we would feature over 100 independent emerging artists who've been carefully selected by a committee of art experts. The reason, by the way, that we call it the Other Art Fair is because our fair experience is just very different than the stuffy art fairs that most people think of. It's a modern, fresh, interactive take on art buying. It's really fun. At our fairs, visitors get to see the work of the artists up close. They enjoy music. We have great DJs, there are drinks, and I think getting to talk to the artist directly is really different than a traditional sort of gallery show. It's not intimidating. The whole event celebrates creativity and the artists themselves, and it's just honestly just a fun night out with friends. But however, as you would imagine, with COVID, we had to postpone all of those in-person fairs, which, you would think that would be a completely miserable story for us, and it's been painful, but it ended up prompting maybe one of our most remarkable COVID stories for the business. And again, this is where I feel very lucky that we've always been a digital first company, because within just 4 weeks of us feeling that initial impact of COVID and realizing we were going to have to postpone fairs, the Saatchi Art engineering and product teams got together and they launched an entirely new online e-commerce platform for the other art fair called the Online Studios. And we were able to bring all those artists online and start telling their stories in a really compelling way digitally. It's just remarkable. It's done so well. I'm so proud of the team. They just passed 1 million in sales in July, which is amazing to me because it didn't even exist in March. And here we have a business unit that's coming back from such a hard hit. I mean, it was tremendously important. Strategically, we wanted to reclaim some of those sales dollars, but it was also so important to the artists who had committed to the fairs and were counting on that money for their own income too.
Yeah, it's a great example of how the business was able to quickly pivot. And to your point, there's the demand from your artist community to participate and really are counting on these in-person events. So you're giving them another outlet to showcase their products. So it's a great example of kind of the business strategy and how you were able to move quickly there, which leads me into my next question in terms of, what changes do you foresee to the business being temporary, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic? And then, what might be more long lasting? What are some things that you might see as permanent changes, whether it's consumer behavior or particular strategies within Saatchi Art?
Yeah, I think, at this point for the website, and we're a few months in, obviously, from the COVID impact, we have some data points coming in to tell us that this increase in new customer growth is not just a temporary phenomenon, which is wonderful. Our satisfaction rate and our repeat rate for purchase, all those numbers are quite high, especially for new customers. I think COVID has really represented a great acceleration in consumers' willingness to buy high-end products like art online. I think it's a force of change in a bigger way. I think about it just for us, like last year, the global art market was valued at, I believe, $67 billion. And only 9% of that, Joe, was online. So COVID and all of this new traffic is going to boost that percentage up. And as the biggest online gallery in the space, that's exciting for us. I mean, it means that we're going to own more of that market. So if I think about, what has changed and what's going to be permanent, I'm really grateful for that. Another thing that I think is here to stay for us in this post-COVID world, and we just talked about it, but this whole online concept for the other art fair, it's pushing us to more quickly reimagine what the future will look like for art fairs. Again, it was sort of a notion on our roadmap that we were going to have to, or wanted to really bring a digital element to a fair, but given the COVID experience and given how much our work accelerated in this area, we're getting more and more excited about it. Technologically, we can bring these art fairs to life online when they occur. And in our vision, a buyer like you, Joe, in Philadelphia, should be able to log in and see what's going on at the London Fair in VR. You should be able to hear the DJ's playlist, and you should be able to do online video chats with the artists. I mean, we've become so good at those, right? It's no big deal now to jump onto a video chat. And, ultimately you should be able to be sitting at home and buy online in an entirely different city at an event that you can tap into. And I think that brand experience is going to be really phenomenal. And again, COVID sprung us into action for very practical reasons, but on a strategic level, what it's going to do for us in the long term, I think is going to be really great.
And it might have accelerated some of these things. To your point, you guys have foreseen this coming down the pike somewhat. This has kind of accelerated your development in some of these areas.
Right. We certainly anticipated that more and more people would become accustomed to buying art online. So we were always thinking about that in our roadmap. And then when the flood came, we were ready.
Yeah. And then leads me to my final question, Jeannie, in terms of, you mentioned Saatchi Art as the kind of the leader in the online art space. What tips or advice might you have for other luxury goods retailers and brands that are looking particularly to sell online? You guys have kind of been a leader in that online space. What advice might you have for some other brands? And it doesn't have to be specific to the art category, but just kind of reaching that luxury buyer digitally.
Sure. I think the advice I would give would be to tell richer, deeper stories. For luxury in particular, I think your identity can't just be about having a well-made product and images and like sort of an elusive concept of a luxury lifestyle. I think customers now, certainly post-COVID, are craving meaning and connection just as much as beauty and craftsmanship. I think brands that are centering their stories on deeper values and that tap into creativity and emotion and how their company makes an impact, they're on the right track. In our case at Saatchi Art, it's been our mission to tell the stories of artists and to share their beautiful artwork with buyers all over the world. And we want to encourage all consumers to think that they absolutely can buy a beautiful original artwork and support these artists with their purchase. But those brand pillars are also our secret conversion weapons. Those stories are important to buyers. So I think I would encourage other retailers to find those sorts of stories for themselves as well.
Great. Well, I think that's some very sound advice for our audience. And at this point, I want to take the opportunity to thank Jeanne Anderson, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Saatchi Art, for joining us today on Total Retail Talks. Thank you, Jeanne.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.
For a glimpse into how leading retailers have managed to grow sales and adapt to shifting consumer behavior, download Total Retail's Top 100 Fastest Growing Retailers report. Go to mytotalretail.com/resources.